Those are the top stories we'll be discussing tonight, and we'll start with Pakistan-Afghanistan crisis, where Pakistan once again linked its future trade and energy projects with Afghanistan to one key condition: that Kabul takes serious actions against cross-border terrorism. Important regional plans are linked to Tapi gas pipeline and CASA 1000 electricity project can only move forward if security situation improves between Pakistan and Afghanistan. Pakistan and Afghanistan currently have bilateral trade of around $1.6 to $1.8 billion in 2023 to 24, but Islamabad says that this trade and all regional connectivity depends on concrete action against militant groups operating from Afghan soil. The Foreign Office spokesperson also confirmed that scheduling of planned Turkish delegation visit is still awaited. Ankara had announced earlier this month that senior Turkish officials would travel to Islamabad for renewed mediation efforts on the Pakistan-Afghanistan conflict, but the dates have not been finalized yet. Tonight we'll have a look about its security concerns, regional products and diplomatic efforts with reference to it. For this we are joined by Mr. Usman Chohan. He's a senior economist. Mr. Chohan, welcome to the show, and I'll start with that. Why Afghanistan is not ready to take any kind of concrete action against the militant groups that are operating from Afghan soil?
It seems to me that this government in quotes in Afghanistan wants to enjoy legitimacy of a full-fledged de jure government, but its de facto recognition by some powers such as China and Russia leave it in an ambiguity where it is trying to hedge between saying that it is a sovereign government and it is helpless against groups in its country. This helplessness excuse cannot work with Pakistan anymore because Pakistan wants Afghanistan to normalize as a society and an economy, and therefore Pakistan is urging politely Afghanistan to do its best and become a self-sustaining and self-functioning government. So this is a question of sovereignty, and it is a question of good neighborship. And I don't think Afghanistan is reaching the mark, and that's why Pakistan has remained concerned.
Exactly. But Mr. Usman, how do you see it, how Pakistan and Afghanistan can ideally maintain its bilateral trade that was between 1.6 to 1.8 billion dollars in 2023 to 2024, considering the threats or security forces are facing by Afghan militant groups?
I think that the potential for trade with Afghanistan is far, far larger if they begin to stabilize their economy and normalize their society. But it should be kept contingent, as we have made it, on them behaving like good neighbors and curbing all nefarious elements that operate from their territory. Pakistan has recognized the sovereignty of Afghanistan, but every government in Afghanistan has failed to show that decency. And Pakistan needs to make sure that progress in the future is done with a maturity that Pakistan has been around for a long time, and Pakistan will be around forever. So Afghanistan needs to accept that reality. That is the contingency we're putting on. Economics is good, and geoeconomics, which is our doctrine, is very good, but it is premised on already having resolved security issues. And if the Taliban want to take Afghanistan one step back, then we'll first have to sort out security stuff and then proceed back to geoeconomics, which is something we've been arguing for almost a decade.
All right, so being a senior economist, how do you see that the ranking of Afghanistan on the World Hunger Index or the World Gender Index, we have seen that. How much it is important for Afghanistan to understand the severity of the situation, because we have seen what's happening in Afghanistan domestically and what they are doing with the neighboring countries?
Yes, Afghanistan is the worst ranked in the world on every metric. Literally everything. And if it isn't, it's because the metric isn't measured correctly. Afghanistan has the worst in terms of child mortality, in terms of high birth rate, in terms of GDP per capita, in terms of water sustainability, all of the basic criteria for running a society. Afghanistan is at the bottom of the world list. Meanwhile, Pakistan is seeing improvements in so many things, it's leaps and bounds ahead. So Pakistan wants all of its neighbors to do well, and in order for this ranking to increase, the government in Afghanistan again, government, will have to get its act together and focus on this rather than on questioning the sovereignty of all its neighbors, and rather than trying to provoke them, far larger neighbors, I might add, into confrontations. This is a very childish approach that the Taliban have. They should be looking at these metrics, but it also requires some software updates in their culture. For example, the gender apartheid you see there, you will not have labor force participation, you will not have female literacy, you will not have the basic things that a society requires to survive in the 21st century. That those basic software updates of their culture need to be undertaken, and that government's belief system is not able to do that.
Obviously, and we cannot call it government because they are not the true representative of Afghan people, and the Afghan people, obviously, they are suffering from Afghan Taliban regime. But being a landlocked country, how much it is, we have seen that it is impacting their economy, but if it would continue and Afghan Taliban regime continue to support TTP, how would it would affect its economy?
Well, its economy will never recover. Afghanistan has been in conflict for 40 years, and now it has a unique window of opportunity to push that half decade aside and to go to some sense of normalcy that it had in that region, wasn't a country, but that region had in the centuries before that. We have to take the long arc of history here, and you have to look at working with neighbors as a landlocked country, because landlocked countries, the smart ones, work closely with their seafaring neighbors, that they have connectivity so that they end up being both a surplus producer nation and they're able to get everything they require. But otherwise, if they're so busy supporting nefarious elements that harm their neighbors, then they can't move forward. And things are going to get much worse in Afghanistan because their birth rate is too high and they have had mass expulsions back into their country, which is to say that 4 million people have been sent back from Iran and from Pakistan. On average, they come with about 6 months of debt equivalent to their GDP on a monthly basis. So they come with debt, they don't have resources, and then there's nothing happening in their country in terms of employment. So they're going to compound their own misery unless they realize that their long term prosperity is intimately tied by being a true younger brother or little brother of Pakistan.
Exactly, but when it comes to Pakistan, isn't it justified in linking economic cooperation in transit and regional projects to Afghans' commitment to stop terrorism? Because obviously we have to secure our land or people as well.
Yes, absolutely. It's fully justified because Pakistan does not want kinetic confrontation. Pakistan does not want violence. Pakistan wants to condition the behavior of its neighbors towards mutual benefit. And that means that we want to make sure that Afghanistan realizes just how important its connection to Pakistan is economically. Otherwise, where are they going to get their stuff from? Iran? Iran is even more hostile to Afghanistan right now. They're about to have a serious confrontation over water if they cannot resolve their issues. Same with Central Asia. Pakistan is critical to Afghanistan, so Afghanistan should provide that modicum of respect to work with Pakistan.
All right, but when we talk about or history about the dialogues, we have seen that Pakistan opening multiple channels for the dialogue. Why has Kabul not shown equivalent seriousness? Who is like backing them when it comes to economy? Because the people are suffering. They have seen it. It is the part and parcel for the development of country, for running a government. What is their like economic plan? How do you see it being an economist?
I don't think that they have that long-term thinking. Anybody who was even basically literate in economics fled the country by 2021. So they don't have that sort of long-term planning. What they're trying to do is de facto rule by fear. As you mentioned, they are not representative of the Afghan people. Well, Afghan people is also kind of a loose term because there are many different nations within Afghanistan, each with their own interests and legitimate concerns. And this Taliban government is not very good at becoming the umbrella to bring all of those peoples together. So it is not thinking in a long term manner. It is just in survival mode with rule by fear. And ultimately, you cannot continue rule by fear indefinitely. You have to bring all of your people into the fold, whether they're Uzbek, Tajik, Turkmen, Hazara, Pashto, anybody. Afghanistan's current setup cannot cater to that. Instead, they are trying to provoke this. I think it's very notorious and brazen that they sent their foreign minister to India soon after the war between India and Pakistan as a kind of sign that they want to work with them. I don't know why you would want to work with India against Pakistan. It is a very bad deal. I think the rest of the world has certainly had a realization of Pakistan's ability to protect its sovereignty, of its military modernization, its amazing air force, its economic potential. All of this is very clear to the world, and yet Afghanistan is collaborating in a brazen manner with India. This is certainly the wrong path for them.
And they'll see the repercussions of it as well. But when it comes to Pakistan's economy, we have seen that considering Pakistan's investment in projects like TAPI and CSA 1000, how much economic loss do you think that Pakistan would face due to Afghanistan's stubbornness?
Well, all it will delay is the potential for projects that have been aspirational. TAPI also has the letter I in it, and the I is probably the most notorious neighbor that Pakistan has. TAPI is aspirational and it's been on the books for about 30 years. Ideally, if all four of these countries from Turkmenistan, so from Ashgabat to Delhi, they could work together in a cooperative manner, there's a huge potential because the energy requirements are here in the two southern countries, and the two, at least the northernmost country is an energy surplus country. You can create a lot of regional synergies and regional connectivity, which speaks to the geoeconomics perspective that Pakistan was advocating. But we cannot talk about geoeconomics until key security concerns within the region are addressed. Afghanistan should realize that it can be far more useful to its own people as well as to neighboring countries if it serves as a stable, honest broker between its neighboring countries. That means that TAPI, but also CPAC, but also BRI, all of these things can converge in Afghanistan and create employment, investment, and all these good things for their people instead of trying to create walls or trying to disturb the peace and not realize that de jure legitimacy would only come by behaving like a legitimate country. So their decisions are completely wrong. And in terms of economic loss, which was your question, again, I say that it was aspirational. Pakistan doesn't need these things, but they would certainly help. Pakistan can continue as it is with its own resources and bringing investment for its own purposes. But there's far more potential for everybody if everybody can work together.
All right, so Afghan soil is being used by the non-state actors, by the third party to curtail CPEC and obviously the Pakistan-China's friendship as well. But we have seen that Pakistan has facilitated millions of Afghan refugees for decades. And don't you think that this effort should be reciprocated because we have spent our economy on them? We have like welcomed them with the open hearts and what they did in return to us. Not talking about the Afghan people, but the Afghan Taliban regime. Such effort should be, reciprocated rather than we have seen how they are treating the people and how they are, letting others to use their land against Pakistan.
I certainly agree that reciprocity is the need of the hour. When two peoples decide to assist one another in turmoil, the expectation is that when one side has a dependency, it will reciprocate in the better times. But instead, the Afghanis, and I mean not just the Taliban, but even down to the common man, they bite the hand that feeds, and they have shown an ungratitude which comes from a sense of entitlement because they also have that racist ideology, racist territorial ideology, and racism can really ruin your perspective on the world. So, whatever kindness that Pakistanis, ordinary Pakistanis, let alone the government, ordinary Pakistanis have shown, Afghanis have never reciprocated it because they feel a sense of entitlement. So that's why we have realized in Pakistan, as well as in Iran and other neighbors of Afghanistan, that you have to beat out this sense of entitlement from people who bite the hand that feeds. And this sort of approach now is what you're seeing with it's not just Pakistan that is picking on Afghanistan. This is not true. Iran is taking an even harder line, showing them their place, that they have to show gratitude and respect, which are free. Gratitude is free. Respect is free. But if you have an open heart, then you can proceed with those things. The things that Pakistan is asking from its counterparts are things that don't cost anything at all, just basic decency. But Afghanistan's people have never shown this.
Mr. Chohan, do you think that is Taliban regime reluctant or unable to boost their economy? That's why they are relying on the third party and letting them use their land against the neighboring countries. What do you think? Are they reluctant or they are unable to do that?
I think your question is more about are they stupid or are they evil? And I think that it is a combination of both. There's a competence issue because long term planning requires a sober mindset, which means that you look at your strengths and your weaknesses and you cover up for the weaknesses and play to your strengths. That competence issue is there because a lot of the expertise that Afghanistan had been cultivating fled the country. They don't have access to that expert specialist pool. Not that it was very large, anyways, but they had some people who are not there anymore. But then there is a motive problem, and the motive reluctance. It is, I believe, entirely within the Taliban's capacity to clamp down on the renegade elements that are harmful to Pakistan. It is totally within their jurisdiction. I think it is a big lie that they're saying that their hands are tied, and they also don't understand the consequences of trying to be de facto legitimate and not being able to exercise that jurisdiction. So they want to play it both ways, and there's such a thing as being too clever by half. And I think that it is a huge gamble with the future of Afghanistan when Pakistan or Iran finally say enough is enough, and that is what both countries have said. Thankfully, there are mediating powers such as Turkey and Qatar who are trying to cool the tempers and trying to tell Afghanistan that it is in your best interest not to play this game. Pakistan is far too important to you for you to be behaving like this. But as you have noted, those talks have not led to a satisfying result for both sides. So that means that they are willing to play the game, but not see it to the end. Play the game of negotiating, coming to the negotiating table next round, the round after, but not leading to a meaningful conclusion because a meaningful conclusion would involve binding them to that responsible behavior. It would be in writing that that they can and must do the things that Pakistan requires of it. Once they're bound to it, they won't be able to have that roguish mentality which they have used in guerrilla warfare for 40 years. It's that guerrillero mindset, guerrilla warfare mindset that cannot lead to civilian stability. And they have not graduated to that mindset. So they have been handed the responsibility of 40 million people's future, 44 if you add the number of people coming back, returned migrants. That is a lot of people's to take care of. They're simply not ready for it. They're still in a low intensity conflict mindset, and therefore they are the wrong people to lead Afghanistan, and the wrong people to usher a better future for South and Central Asia.
Mr. Chohan, we have gone through a number of dialogues between Pakistan and Afghanistan, and don't you think that our mediators would be frustrated with the passage of time because Afghanistan is not ready to sign any written agreement on it?
Be a long drawn out process, and the countries that are participating have a very long term orientation. I mean, the mediators have a long term orientation. So Qatar has had much harder things to deal with recently, such as in the Middle East. And Iran and Turkey have very long term orientations. Turkey, in particular, has a very long term stake in Pakistan's future as a brotherly country. So the frustration, if anything, is very minor because the stakes are very high, certainly from Afghanistan's perspective. So even if one round doesn't work, it is possible to set up another one. I don't think that these mediators will ever say, there's nothing more we can do because they realize that these are two countries that are next to each other. It is not about a phased withdrawal to some other continent as was previously done in Afghanistan. The people who are mediating are also from this region, just as the two belligerents, quote unquote, are. So it is important for all these stakeholders to keep that stamina. Pakistan is demonstrating that stamina. Any other country in Pakistan's position would probably be far, far more aggressive and far, far more accusatory. But Pakistan is trying to work within a system, respecting sovereignty, bringing in everybody towards a normalization process. So Pakistan has demonstrated enormous responsibility, responsible behavior, and maturity. And I only wish that Afghanistan would even partially reciprocate that, but we've already talked about their inability to reciprocate the kindness of others.
Mr. Chohan, do you think that Afghan Taliban regime is causing a long-term damage to Pak-Afghan economic relations? Because we have seen their stubbornness over such issues, and or trade is, halted due to such kind of issues. Do you really think that they are affecting it for the longer term?
This is a difficult question because who speaks for Afghanistan in the long term? If you agree with me that the Taliban are not representative of Afghanistan, but the Afghan nation or the peoples that sum up Afghanistan are, then ultimately there would be some other setup in the future that would be more representative. You can't be less representative than the Taliban, which excludes 50% of society. It excludes women based on gender apartheid. I mean, you can't be more exclusionary than they are. So if there is a more inclusive system that comes in the future, certainly I presume they would have more long-term orientation. You know, Afghanistan has a history of having monarchs for 200 years plus. Those monarchs did have long-term orientations, but certainly this current setup does not. Now, is that possible to work with Pakistan with a more long-term orientation? It would be prudent. It would be pragmatic to do that. Pakistan would have that expectation. But there is a deep seated lack of respect for sovereignty in Afghan people. That is based on racism, basically. Now, how deep set is that racism and can it actually be extirpated, that territorial racism? I don't know because this is something that goes deep in their veins. And if they cannot recognize what is essentially a fact of history, what is called the uti possidetis doctrine that the UN established for all post colonial states, if they cannot put themselves to terms with a future, the next 1,000, 2,000 years, then they will always have this animosity and always have this resentment and jealousy. Pakistan has never shown that sort of jealousy. It's only shown an open heart and kindness. So it evidently both countries are operating at very different wavelengths. One has a future and one doesn't. So they have to look deep in their system, is what I'm telling you, and whether they can extirpate their territorial racism and accept the modern world where all neighboring countries can operate as good neighbors. That's a difficult question.
And they need to revisit their domestic policies as well, obviously, and obviously their domestic policies are, shown to the world what they are doing with the women, what they are doing with the people working there. But we have seen that Pakistan welcomed them with an open heart, and Pakistan continues to emphasize on the peaceful engagement. How can international communities support Pakistan's stance without compromising on Pakistan's security concern? Because it is very important and we cannot compromise on it.
Yes, certainly. Well, the best demonstration comes from the countries that are acting as mediators. Turkey has been a very reliable, honest broker when it comes to its brotherly country, Pakistan. The same can be said for other countries that have respected Pakistan, recognized its importance and its sovereignty, and still decided to also engage with Afghanistan and try to bring cooler tempers. So I think those are the best examples. It is tragic, though. I understand where you're going with this as well, which is that there was a very wide ranging interest in the future of Afghanistan about 10 years ago, where the liberal order types in major world capitals were talking about women's rights and human rights. And I don't know where those people have gone. I don't know where their interest in Afghanistan's future has gone. The children of Afghanistan, the women. It seems that what was being promoted as a humanitarian cause has suddenly disappeared because there's no instrumental agenda involved. That leads one to question the sincerity of that liberal desire for women emancipation or human rights. It seems that that was pretty hollow at the end of the day. But Pakistan doesn't see it like that because in Pakistan, we are giving women entrepreneurship right now is getting a huge push. Women education, women empowerment. There is no governmental structural barrier to empowering women or to promoting human rights in Pakistan. There may be cultural issues, there may be social content, there may be class conflict. Those are at a very tactical level. But strategically, empowering women is critical to Pakistan and realizes it. Whereas in Afghanistan, there's a very specific problem now that women are being kept within the four walls, their char diwari, and there are households where there are no men. So you require men to operate in the system, but they're warded. The men aren't there. So what is going to happen to a household which needs a man but can't find one, doesn't have one? They have basically crippled their entire economic mechanism, and I mean economic like day-to-day economic mechanism. It is simply an illogical thing, and ultimately it will really come from indigenous revolt. The people in Afghanistan cannot keep going on like this because there is no foreign invader to rally the people against. They really realize that their tyranny is their own, and they will have to rise up and remove it. And there is a strong current in Afghanistan, even within the Taliban, but certainly outside the Taliban, that this regime has to be taken away. It's been 4 years. You can't keep going like this.
Thank you so much, Mr. Usman Chohan, for joining us. We were joined by Mr. Usman Chohan, who is a senior economist, and we were talking about Pak-Afghan crisis, economic aspects of it, where Pakistan once again linked its relationship with Afghanistan depends on their treatment against TTP.